Okay, good morning. Hemshech Chaim Beis, Volume 2. We are middle of page 1184. On 2/3 of the way down, 1184. And to sum up, in context of the general central theme of Ayin Beis being interface between the divine and existence, between the highest levels of the divine, all the way up to pre-tzimtzum, where everything is purely elokus, godly, that we can connect with it even though we are after the tzimtzum. The tzimtzum being that quantum leap, paradigm shift that allows for existence to take hold, space for existence. So ultimately, through our work, we can connect the two in a total and utter seamless union, which we've been calling here now in the language in the last Maimarim have been the Yichud Havayin Elikim. Yichud v'yadaita Ayin v'shavesa levavecha ki Hashem hu Elikim. And doing so not just from the perspective below, meaning that existence becomes aware of a higher presence and a divine source, which we call Das Tachten, the Ayin of the Yesh HaNivra, but also Das Elyon, which is Shiluv, not just now Shiluv Havaya and Adnai, but also Shiluv Adnai and Havaya, and that is Das Elyon, that the true reality is godliness, and that we recognize that everything in existence is completely nullified in that presence. Das Elyon. And that is what's all included in the verse V'yadaita Ayin. V'yadaita, the word das. Das comes from connection, from bonding, identifying, personalizing. The words you use is chabrus, is kashrus, is chabrus, chakara, and hargosha, in the context even of intelligence, where you identify with and personalize the experience, the idea. So it becomes all the way internalized to the point that affects your emotions and your actions. But now, this mimer that we're learning now is the context is understanding the next part of the verse, the pasuk, which is B'shamayim mimal v'ala aretz mitachas, that this recognition of the divine is both in heaven above and earth below. And he asked the question, what is the necessity for emphasizing both? And in this discourse, the next mimer is going to give a deeper answer. But right now, he says the basic poshet, the answer on a basic level is to negate duality, that the heaven and earth are not two separate entities and domains. Spirituality and material world are all connected, that even in physical actions, mitzvahs maisius, you can manifest godliness, the rotzna elyon, God's desire. And contrast to those that have a different opinion, that al pi seichel do not see how you can really equalize the two. So they both come together. Now the context of all of this, besides Das Elyon and Das Tachten, I've reviewed many times. I don't know how I'm going to do it now. Just briefly say that all this is going in the last few hundred pages, discussion of exactly this joining of godliness in the lowest level. The lowest levels can connect to the godliness in the highest levels. And this was all part of the Torah of the Magid, Aseh lecha shtei chatzetzos, to make two trumpets, chatzetzos from the word chetzitzuros, two half shapes that join together. What are the two half shapes? The neshama, the soul, and that comes down into this world, and godliness, the higher levels of godliness. But this union, as I mentioned, is not just in the higher levels of spiritual worlds and Atzilus, but also after the parsa, which means after the partition, in the words of not just Atzilus, but also in Biyah, you have these two you join the two, and and that itself was the beginning of, was a long parentheses that we're still in the middle of, that was coming to explain the two interpretations in Aremimcha Lekai HaMelech, the Mamayla Lamato, Mamato Lamayla. Aremimcha Lekai HaMelech means exalting Elekai, God, Elekai HaMelech, God our King. And Aremimcha could be interpreted as Mamayla Lamato, that you're drawing down Remamus, God's exalted state, Keser, Remamus, into the divine Elekai Melech that manifests within existence, Elikim and Melech that relates Malchus to existence. Or you can interpret it the other way around, that you're elevating Elekai Melech, Aremimcha is being elevated to the level of Keser and transcendent energy. There's a difference between Torah and Tefillah. Torah does it from the top down, and Tefillah, prayer, does it from the bottom up. And that, of course, followed volume 1, the long discussion about Bligvul and Gvul, the joining of the transcendent infinite energy and the finite energy, which is the difference between the Ovis and Matan Torah, that the work before Torah, before Sinai, was really aligning existence to its source. And then by Matan Torah comes a Chodash, a higher, a new energy that's beyond the source, which is the divine before the Tzimtzum and so on, all the way to the beginning of the Hemshech. We spoke about Keser, how Keser is that interface, and the interface on all the levels between the highest levels all the way to the lowest levels in existence. So bring it back to where we are right now. So we began with a Zohar. We're in the middle of learning the Zohar, explanation of a Zohar, at the bottom of page 1182, to explain this idea, that there is no duality. He brought a Zohar where Rabbi Yitzchak says that when God created the world, Kad Ovid, Alma Ovid Alma Tato Kagamna de Alma Ilah. When God created the world, He created that the lower world should correspond with, should be similar and like the higher world, and that's V'iyu Yikare Le'elo Latata. That is God's glory. But later He calls it Haflah, God's wonder, that because He's beyond Al Milah and Al Matata, which He defines as Atzilus and Biyah, that's why He can join and unite both of them together, as we explained in on page 1183. Then he brought the Ramaz. The Ramaz is in the commentary on the Zohar that says Yikare is from the word levush, garment, a levush of Malchus. It is also, why is it called Yikare? Because it's a levush Malchus, as he said, Kare lemane machabdusa. It's like the royal garments, like a king who wears garments. So, but a garment indicates more than just yoker. It also indicates that it comes into a levush. And he says the levush is al milah tatar levushim to the ershem islabish behen. So when you say iyu yikar le'el tata, these are his garments that manifest the air that manifest that enclosed in them, and that's the kav achut, the kav that's higher than Atzilus, that goes into Atzilus and even pierces the partition, the parsa, as I mentioned before, and therefore brings the divine all the way into Biyah. So now, what the Rebbe Rashab explains, that not just mitzad the makif, makif is there an equalizer between the higher and the lower, the higher world and the lower world, Atzilus and Biyah, but also mitzad pnimi, because Yikar is referring to levush, the pnimi of the kav, that also due to that there is an equalization between Shamayim and Malva, Aretz Mitachas in the language of the Pasuk, even though he didn't bring that specifically. But now comes the second part of the Zohar, Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda comes to explain this, because there are several questions posed. So I'll sum up what those questions are, and then he goes how Rabbi Yehuda comes to add a new depth that Rabbi Yitzchak, even more than what Rabbi Yitzchak said. Rabbi Yitzchak made the statement that there's an equalizing element of bringing the lower being similar to the higher. But Rabbi Yehuda, as he said, goes further. he brings the posuk. He says that this is correct. What you say, hachi hu vadai. What you said is absolutely correct, but then he adds ubara adam al kula. Those are his words. That the higher and lower world you're talking about, there's also bara adam. He created a human being that's above them all, and brings the verse anerchi sisi eretz ba'adam alel barasi. So yes, there's the creation of eretz, of the earth, but the human being I created above it all. So the Rebbe Rashab explained, what is Rabbi Yehuda coming to add? So he said, because Rabbi Yehuda is coming to explain how. How do you actually bring a higher level of the divine into a lower level? Yes, we understand it comes from the power of Ein Sof, but how is it implemented? In a way that the lower level experiences it. Not just that the power of Ein Sof to connect everything. Of course, God is beyond Atzilus and Biyah, so you join them. But we want to experience it. So how is that done? And he adds, because in the world of Toyu, higher than Atzilus, these two worlds are separate, Atzilus and Biyah. In Tikkun, they come together. So the question is, what attaches them? What connects them? I'm going to go over the few points he made, the questions that Rabbi Yehuda is coming to address. Okay, Vayidei Ma'u is Chabris. I'm reading from the top of page 1184, just summing up. V'gam, additionally, what Rabbi Yehuda is coming to address, Biyah is be'emes, infinitely distant from Atzilus. Again, we're not talking about Mitzad Ein Sof. Mitzad Ein Sof, from above, God can do anything. And he has the power to do anything. But if you talk about from the perspective of creation and existence, Giluyim, Biyah is be'emes ein arech. Because Atzilus is a lakus mamish, and Biyah is a yesh. It already has an independent identity. So even though he says Takamitzat Sev of Kalam and Ayin social mamish talshus, you can there's an equalizer between heaven and earth. Equally. Okay, there's no difference, but that's all concealed. That's not a revealed state. How, in a way that we can relate to, is there a gilui of this unifying force that like Sev of Kalam and Kamayrotzen Elyon in the mitzvahs, that in the mitzvahs below, in physical mitzvahs, you can manifest this level of Sev of Rotzen Elyon. Okay, B'yesa Nifla, or B'yesa Nifla, and even more wondrous or surprising is to how do you understand Pnimi? Pnimi is subject to distinction. Sevev, the challenge is how to reveal that equanimous and equal power. But in Pnimi is defined by separation, by hierarchy. And Biyah is lower than Atzilus in that hierarchy. So how could this gili that can Atzilus be in the state of in Biyah, which is a state of yesh? And then the Rebbe Rashab adds, moreover, furthermore, that Rabbi Yehuda mavayda in be'emek yeser. Says even more, he's adding that Rabbi Yehuda is going to explain this whole idea with more depth. From the way Rabbi Yitzchak explained it. So Rabbi Yitzchak stated the facts that the lower and the higher are connected, the lower is similar to the higher. But Rabbi Yehuda, besides these questions that we just asked, also explains the whole idea on a deeper level. And here's what the Rebbe Rashab says. So in other words, it's not just how do you bring Atzilus into Biyah, it's also the fact that according to Rabbi Yitzchak, you have the reflection of the Kav in Atzilus and the reflection of the reflection, Malchus, of Atzilus as it goes into Biyah. But you don't have the actual Primi, he says. It's only the reflection of the Kav that pierced the partition together with the Kalim. but it's not amitis hagili adayin. That's the words he uses. It's not the true revelation. It's a reflection. Atzilus is a reflection. Malchus of Atzilus, the Kelim of Malchus, is a reflection of a reflection, as he says. So Rabbi Yehuda is going to explain how we not just get a reflection, but we actually get the more deeper essence of the kav, of the Panimi, the mitis hagili, as he calls it. The second point is that's from the perspective of the Ur. What level of Ur we get? Is it just a reflection, or is it the core? What he calls, later he says, atzmis hakav. But right now, he called it amitis hagili. But then there's another issue the other way around. What comes from Atzilus and Biyah? It's coming from the Kelim of Malchus. They're going to Biyah, they become the neshama, the Ur of Biyah, not the Kelim of Biyah. Like I explained last time with the example. It doesn't permeate the actual substance and structure of Biyah. It's still the neshama of Biyah. So the neshama level of Biyah. So in other words, it's still ruchnius. In the language that we spoke earlier, we want to have a seamless connection between the spiritual and the material. In this case, between Eidus and Kelim. But in Biyah, it only permeates the Eid of Biyah, becomes the neshama of Biyah. So it's like your soul is aware of the divine, but what about the body? Yes, it's true that the Kelim of Biyah experience Yediyas HaMetzias, they're aware, but it's only knowing that it exists, but it's not appreciating what is it made of. It's not the mahus and the personality. There's still a schism, a disconnect. And the kavana is gili era kav mamish bibiyah. The kavana is not just to have a reflection, and not just one that enters the soul level, but there should be the era kav itself into the kelim as well. Shezeu amitis hagili. In other words, not just the Yediyas HaMetzias, which is a reflection, but having an experience of the Eir itself, meaning the personality of the mahus of it, not just the Metzias. And then he added one more thing, that something else happens now. Not just does Biyah, the lower level, experience the very essence of the divine light, but it does something to Atzilus that Atzilus didn't have. And this is the biggest chiddush. In other words, it's not just Biyah becomes connected to the higher levels. It causes Teisvis Er Ba'Atzilus Liyas Gam Sham Gili Atzmus Hakov Leira Ka'ora Levad. So all this is going to be explained by Rabbi Yehuda, how this takes place. And of course, in one word, the answer is the human being. Adam. Ubara Adam al Kula. And now he's going to explain that. We'll start learning from here. We stopped more or less at these lines. So now he's going to explain how all this is achieved. All the points we made, which Rabbi Yitzchak does not address. Okay, so the points are that to bring down, how do you bring the earth down in a way that becomes united with Biyah? Not just Seva Kalam, but Pnimis, Mamal Kalalmin, also an Er Pnimi. And he does it in a deeper way by explaining not just the reflection, and not just in the neshama, the oil level, but the etzem of the kav, all the way into the kelim of biyah, to the lowest levels. Okay, so how is this done? So we'll read here now, the line begins, Chulu, Valze Omar Ubara Adam al Kula. It's a little more than halfway down the page on 1184. And if you want to follow along, you don't have the sefer, the book, you go to ayinbeis.com, and all these pages are scanned there that you can look at or download. Okay. So here's what Rabbi Yehuda says. Valze Omar, and on all this, Rabbi Yehuda says, Ubara Adam al Kula. And he created the human above al Kula, above them all. Above what? The al mitata and al milah. above Biyah, above Atzilus. So you have an Adam that has power that's stronger than all these worlds, as we're going to explain now. So he's going to go now into a longer explanation of what this Adam means. So before I read it, let me just give a small introduction here. We usually see Adam, we think of it this way. God created existence in 6 days, right? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then came the crown jewel, in the words of the Mishnah in Sanhedrin, that after creating the whole existence, now he brought the special guest. Why was the human being created last? So the Mishnah says in Sanhedrin, Naflamed Zayin, the Mishnah says that because he is the crown jewel, and first you set the table, and then you bring the guest. The Gemara says, the Mishnah says another reason as well, that in case a person misbehaves, he should always know that even a zvuv, even a lowly insect was created before you. And it's not a contradiction because it basically depends how the human being behaves. So what does this mean that he's the crown jewel? What does it mean that he is the ultimate guest? It means that a human being was the only creation created b'tselem elikim. Everything is godly creation. But God gave him b'tselem elikim a special divine power that other creatures do not have. Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chaim. God instilled, imbued, breathed the breath of God into the offer. Vayikach offer min adama. He took the earth and turned it into ahila adam nishmas chayim. Now nefesh chayim is now a living entity. Vayipach ba'apav nishmas chayim v'ahila adam nefesh chayim. Now a living entity, but he has a power that the whole creation does not have. Even though the human being is weaker and smaller than much of creation and other creations, nevertheless, he has the power to dominate over them. Like we'll say further, for the do, the human being has the power to control because of his intelligence, but in addition, the human being also has free will. That God instilled in the human being the ability to elevate the world to a far qualitatively different dimension to fulfill the purpose of creation, to make a dira b'tachtein. Without the human being, you'd have a beautiful world, a designed piece of art, using the analogy I've often used, but that would be it. It goes like clockwork, follows what God wants. There's no deviation one way or the other. Not higher and not lower. The human being has the capacity to elevate the world and transform it. Like it says, that first Rosh Hashanah, that 6th day, that Adam Adishon, what did he do? He gathered all creation. He says, come, let us bow. Let us recognize God, our creator. And unfortunately, of course, that leads to another side, that he could also use his free will the wrong way and bring the world down, which is what happened after the Chet Chadas. So when you think about it in that context, so the Adam is definitely a completely different type of creation than any other creation. That's what he says in simpler, it's Adam Allah, Bara Adam al Kula. The human being is created with above them all, with more power than all of them, which a neshama has that power as it comes into a guf to do what I just said, to fulfill the purpose of creation. That's why Adam was the only one that can give names to all the creatures, because he had that higher power, that higher wisdom, that higher awareness, a divine awareness. Tzelem Elokim. Okay, but now let's speak about it in Kabbalistic terminology. In Kabbalistic terminology, it goes like this. Adam Nivra B'Tselem means that we were created in the Tzelem Elokim, how Elokim manifested in the Tzir of Adam. Or else there's no Tzelem. We know God does not have an image. Adam hu v'lei demus Adam, as we learned earlier from the Psukim and Yecheskel and so on. So what does it mean that there's an image? a divine image. We're creating divine. There is no image. So, of course, this goes to the Esespheres, that the Eibishter manifested in what we call the Shiur of an Adam. It's called Adam Elyon, the supernal man. Obviously, the Eibishter always remains above and removed from that. But he wanted to have a place after the Tzimtzum that we can meet him, that there's some similarity. And what's the similarity? The Eibishter created and emanated these 10 spheres, Chochma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, Yesod, Malchus. Now he created a parallel, the Keiches HaAdam, the faculties of the human being, parallel the divine attributes. So just like there's Chochma and Atzilus and higher, Adam Elyon and all the levels of Adam we're going to learn shortly, there's also Adam HaTachten, corresponds. Our job is Valachta B'drachav, to go in his paths, God's path, and emulate him. Li'idam love, that's the expression, to emulate God. L'dofka b'ay. Mahu chanun, afata chanun. Mahu rachum, afata rachum. Just as he is giving compassionate, so too should you be compassionate. So when we sit and learn Torah, use our mind, we're aligning kol ha'keira v'sheina b'teira kodesh baruch hu keina v'sheina kenegdei. Any person who's reading and learning Torah, God sits and correspondingly sits and reads and learns with you. So there's a constant relationship now. When we do chesed, in a sense, we evoke God's chesed, and so on and so forth. So Adam Elyon is a word used to describe how the Eibishter manifest, elikus, and it's mamala kalam, it's pinimi, because it's in Shiur of Adam. But there's also the elements of Makib. There's also Ratzon Elyon. So now when we talk about the Eibishter having Ratzon, Tainug, Ratzon, Chochma, Bina, all these words is the way elikus, godliness, manifests in some form of structure, which from there will evolve the structure of the human being that God created on that sixth day. So now in Kabbalistic terminology, Adam is a word used constantly. You're going to soon see that Adam, there's the Gimel Minei Adam, there are different types of levels of Adam. It's not just Adam Elyon and Adam HaTachten, the supernal man, and the one on earth, the lower one, meaning the human being. There's in Elikus, in the Shtalshus itself, every level is called Adam. Adam Kadmon, we're going to soon learn Adam Diyetzira, Adam Debriya, Adam Diyetzira, Adam Da'asiya. So the word Adam that the Zohar says, that Rabbi Yehuda says, V'bara Adam al Kula, is talking about the Adam in each world. The Adam is above and has more power than the world itself. So in other words, every Elam, Atzilus, Bri, Yitzidasiya, has its structure. We learned Eris, Kalim, Levushim, Heichalis, garments, chambers. There's parsoyas and partitions between them. But then introduced, just like in the creation was introduced the human being, in each world is an Adam, a level of Adam that has the power to transform that world into something greater than it was based on creation alone, which of course is the subject matter we're dealing with. Not just that the power that the lower world is similar to the higher world, but who actually connects the worlds, who unites them. This is going to be the Adam. So he's going to now go into a relatively longer explanation. What does the word Adam mean in this context of Ishtalshlus? So here's what he says. The general cosmic order. Ishtalshlus is always the word used for the general process that God used to create existence. Ishtalshlus. Ishtalshlus means an evolution. Like shalshelis, ishtalshlus, things evolve from level to level. Like we say, Ishtalshlus hadvarim. Someone asks you, tell me the story. How did we get here? So I'll tell you the Ishtalshlus hadvarim. How do we get from point A, from the point of departure to where we are now? That's like a Ishtalshlus. An order, a progression, process. So he says, Klolos Ishtalshlus hu b'chinas Adam. The general Ishtalshlus is the state of Adam. In other words, he's using Adam in a very broad term now. Adam not just as a human being, but as reflecting all of Ishtalshlus. Ukaneda, the Zoh, as it's known, that Zoh, Zohar Ampin, which is the 6 midas, chesed through Yesod of Atzilus usually, hu b'chinas Adam ha'elyon shal gabi hakisei. So the expression in Yecheskel, when he sees his vision, remember the vision of Yecheskel and Markova, the chariot, what did he see? So he saw, he says, 4 different faces. And then he said, which was the Markova. Then he says that then there was an Adam al Gabi Hakise. He sees a human sitting on a throne. So Chassidus explains the throne is Biyah. And Atzilus, Zod Atzilus, is the Adam al Gabi Hakise. So we see now the word Adam is being used on a level in Atzilus. Zoh, hu b'chinas Adam, ha'elyon shal gabi hakisei. The supernal man that sits on the kisei. Obviously, it's not a man. It's the tzir of 7 of the 6 midas, which is the core emotions of the supernal man that resides on the kisei. Now, obviously, we have to always mafshit megash miyusam. It's not a physical. It's only we're using language that we can relate to. It's not physical throne. It's not a physical person. It's just describing how a higher level settles in and it gets manifest in the kisei, al gabi kisei. That's called Adam Elyon. But now he's going to show how Adam is used all over Hishtalshlus, not just Zoh. V'chein Chochma b'chinas Adam. And the same level of Chochma is also called a level of Adam. Ukiyadua, as it's known, the Adam Arishan hu b'chinas Adam ilah. That Adam Arishan, when we say Adam Arishan, the first human, that what did he reflect? What did he represent? Adam ilah, the higher Adam. And that's the level of Chochma. So Chochma is also called Adam. Now he's going to distinguish in the parentheses. So what's the difference between the Adam of Chochma and the Adam of Zoh? So he's going to explain. V'hu inyan ampe ravravi v'ampe zutri. Okay. Ampe is a face in like Arich Ampin, Zohar Ampin. So Ampin is a face. When you say ampe ravravi, you mean a large face. And ampe zutri means a small face. It's like the difference between the face of an adult and the face of a child. Like, for example, when we talk about the kruvim, does he mean? I think he's going to mention it here. So the kruvim were the cherubs, the images of 2 children on top of the Ayin. It was the face of a child. So that's usually referred to kravya. That's a krav is a small face. Now again, this is not. We have to stay away from anything anthropomorphic. It's not about physical. These are all mashalim. These are examples to explain. Just like a child has a small face and an adult has a large face. So what is a face? A partsuf, ampe. So there's a face that is the shape of a human face that is expanded and large, and there's one that's more diminished and microcosm and more of what we call a small face. So like when you say moichen de gadlus or moichen de katnus, literally it means maturity and immaturity. What it means moichen de katnus is when the mind is there, but it's not fully developed yet. And then there's the mind as it's fully developed and matured. So he says there's 2 levels of faces. Bechinas Chochma v'Zoh. That's the difference. Chochma is amfer ravravi because it's intellect. It's the beginning of intellect. So it's a far higher level. And Zoh, which is also a face, also a human dimension, also Adam, but it's called the small face. Zohar Ampin, that's the name, Zohar Ampin. It's another way of saying Ampe Zutra, small face. Ukenoida, I'm sorry. The Adam Hagodl Ba'anokim, who b'chinas Chochma. So there's a pasuk, Adam Godl Ba'anokim, person is great among among giants. So that's the level of Chochma. That means you're talking about a great level. You're talking about a high stature. That's the level of Chochma. Va'ampe zutra, the small face, hanikr kruv, kravia, is called a kruv. Sometimes cherub or kravia, that's the Aramaic for kruv. Hu b'china
small children.
Huh?
Keravia, small children.
Yeah. Yeah, kruv from the word karavia. Ravia is small children, right? That's Zah, small face, Zoy Rampin, Ukamesha Kosav, Betera Eir, Mi Yetencha Pasha Truma. So he's referring us to look in Pasha Truma, where he actually, I think he speaks about it in context of the Odin, the two Kruvim, Karavia. Yeah. Okay. So the key thing to remember again, this is not physical. We're using physical words to describe spiritual states. So just like in the physical world, something is larger, higher stature, lower stature. Same thing in the spiritual worlds. That's why we use these names. That's why in Kabbalah, very important, the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem Tov, the Tzemach Tzedek cites it right in the beginning of Sheresh Mitzvah Satfila, was very makpid. He was very concerned and made sure that we should always be, when you learn Kabbalah, you have to be lahafshit megash miyusam. It's very important to not allow ourselves to turn it to become too literal. We have to learn how to abstract it and understand its abstract meaning and not in this physical context. It's very easy to fall in the trap of turning all this into physical expressions, when really it's only a physical example of a spiritual entity. I keep repeating it because the nature is we're used to the physical and we don't relate always to the spiritual. That's why I'm emphasizing it. Okay, so what have we established so far? The point is Adam. That we find Adam, Klolos say the Ishtalshus, you're going to find the level of Adam. He's talking not about the full, he's talking here, Adam, the face right now, but he also in general, the face often describes the main feature of a human being is on the face. So therefore, he spoke about Zah and Chochma. So we have a lower level of Adam, so to speak, of a smaller face, and the larger face, this larger Adam, higher level. And now he's going to bring Adam in other dimensions as well. Malchus. And so too in the level of Malchus. So we spoke about Chochma, Zah, Malchus now, remember, is the last Svira. The lowest, the 10th Svira. Adam. We also find by Malchus Kemara Adam, like the image, like the feature, Kemara, like the image, the likeness of a face. Kedmus is usually likeness. Kemara Adam, like Kemara Adam, like a reflection of a face. Why? The Bechinas Malchus Kishayeredes LeBria, because Malchus, as it descends into the next lower world, Bria. Nikra b'shem behema. When it descends, it's already called behema. It's already called an animal. Behema here, an animal, is not derogatory. It means it doesn't have the gilui of Adam. It's behema as in terms of a living force, but sometimes we call behema, but it's a force that has less divine revelation. Ubatzilus ibchinas Adam. And Ramalchus is still in Atzilus. It's called a state of Adam. So now we have a third level of Adam. We have Zah, Chochma higher, Malchus lower.
Udemus pneihem kemare Adam in Yechezkel.
Right, correct. Yeah. The likeness of their face was like the image of a human. So he's calling this now Malchus. So the Rebbe Rashab is not really elaborating here. I elaborated simply to bring out the point. It seems to me, if I may say so, in context of Ayin Beis, what the Rebbe Rashab is doing here, he's tying together a lot of ideas, but also bringing new language that we haven't really learned before in Ayin Beis, but it's in Chassidus. Remember, Ayin Beis, at the end of the day, one of the big contributions of Ayin Beis is that he connects all the sugyas of Chassidus. So when you learn Ayin Beis, you're going to find ideas from all the Maimarim. I never really went through everything with everything Chassidus is in Ayin Beis, but I can tell you a very big part of Chassidus is here. Not necessarily with all full-length explanations, but he connects every Maimer. I mark for myself very often to just see how many sugis and how many ideas of Chassidus he brings together. And it's not just that he collects them together, he connects them. Like right here, the sugi of Adam in Maimorim, he's now connecting to what? To the interface that we're describing. Because remember, all this is about how to bring Almi Tata should be like Almi Law. That the lower levels should be like the higher levels, and even deeper, as we've learned. That's what Rabbi Huda is coming to add. So the Rebbe Rashab now is explaining the words of the Zohar. He's bringing out how it's in all the levels. In the Shtalshlus, you're going to find this inyan of Adam, and then, of course, the concept of Ubara Adam al Kula, that in each level, whether it's Chochma or Zah or Malchus, or the other levels he's going to discuss shortly, there's always the Adam Bara al Kula, which is the one that's above them all, and that connects, that makes the connection, the interface between higher and lower. So in other words, though we learned much about interface, we're now discussing, which is not the first time, who ultimately does it? Who's the facilitator? Who makes the connection? We know that it's possible to connect. Ultimately, it's going to be the Adam in each level that makes the final connection. So very simply put on this level here, the Eibishter sends a human being to this earth and the Shaman down below. Now you have to do a mitzvah. You have to do something. And when you do the mitzvah, you connect the lower to the higher. So the Adam, that's why I elaborate, the 6th day of creation, you don't have Adam, you have a world, a beautiful world God created. Yes, there's no sin, technically speaking, but there's also no elevation. It's the human being that is charged, la'avda l'shamra, to serve and protect. And Adam Ayin lavidas Adam, you need the human being to work the earth, not just for physical sustenance, to transform the world. To fill the world and conquer it. What does conquer mean? To sublimate it and elevate it to Lakus. It shouldn't remain in a neutral state. So the Adam is key to it all. That's what the Rebbe Rashab is doing here. So he's bringing the sugi of Adam in different places of Chassidus and connects it now to the theme, the larger theme of Ayin Beis. Okay. Uberamaz, and you see, he does it thoroughly, not just a line, but Ramaz Mishpatim Dav Tzadik Dalet Sef Amid Beis. We already mentioned the Ramaz earlier. So the Ramaz is a classic commentary on Zohar based on Kisvei Arizal. He basically brought from all the Kisvei Arizal and explained Zohar with it. And in Mishpatim, in Zohar Mishpatim 94, the end of page of B, 94, the end of B, 94, the bottom of the second page of the Zohar goes like Gemara. You say Daf Beis Amid Aleph, Daf Beis Amid Beis. So the same thing here. The Zohar is Daf Tzadik Dalet Seif Amid Beis. So the Daf is page 94, the bottom of the second side of the page. So what does the Zohar, what does the Ramah say there? The Inyan Adam ba'Eirach Hatzilis. So there the Zohar talks about Eirach is the word path. Eirach means a road, a pathway. So Adam, the level of Adam in the path of Hatzilis, ba'Eirach Hatzilis, in the, you could say the highway, you can say probably road, pathway is the best word. So Pirish, this is what the Ramaz interprets. Shezeu neshama mibchinas Malchus d'Hatzilis. Now, what it says there, Adam ba'Eirach Hatzilis, which level is it? It could be Chochma, it could be Zah. He says it's the level of neshama which comes from Malchus d'Hatzilis. And the Rebbe Rashab says that this was cited earlier. Huva le'il dibra maskal boyal pare. So earlier in the Maimer boyal pare, let me just look for a quick reminder. Okay, boyal pare goes back to page. Oh wow! All the way back to the Magid's Torah. So Boyal Pare, where he brings this Ramaz, Eirach Atzilus. The Mimer begins on page 832. I'm just looking here. It's always good to just see what he says there.
As in Pasach Eliyahu, the Ihu Oirach Atzilus, after he's describing all the things about Adam.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. One second. I just want to see where it is here. If you guys are looking, maybe you help me. We can get this. I'm almost sure. Yeah, you're correct. The Zohar and Mishpatim, that's where the Ramaz is, but he's explaining Iyu Eirach Datzilus, correct. The Pasach Eliyahu. Okay, I don't see it quickly. He says he cites it there, so you could rest assured he does, but I don't see it right now.
Which page is this? Boyal Power.
832 it begins. I think it's on page 838, if I recall correctly, but I don't see it directly. No. Okay. It's a long mimer. Adam. Yeah, I found it. Bottom of page 840 and top of 841. Beseh besam mishpatim. Zoche yati yaven lehave b'shlimin da'asvin. The iu Adam be'erech atzilus. The le'eli v'skara b'diyukne demare. Because of a Ramaz, the atkam b'dar ba'atzilus shebebiyah. The kana kava madregas atzilus. Ad b'chinis nefesh, the atzilus b'chinis Malchus. Adam shalakisei. Okay. Very good. It's at the end of the Maimer. Okay, so fine. Now the Rebbe Rashab continues. Ukamoikein ak. So now we've established that Adam in Zah, in Chochma, in Malchus, and he says Kamoikein ak, Adam Kadmon. Nikra Adam is called Adam. So the first world of all worlds, Adam, Kadmon is Adam. Ukaneda, as it's known, that Gimel Madregisha Behem. I'm sorry, that Gimel Madregisha Behem Nifchen Klolos Eishtalshlus. He's now explaining it even further. It's known that the three levels with which all of Ishtalshlus is measured and defined, Hein Gimel B'chinas Adam. In other words, when we describe Ishtalshlus in general terms, it's defined by and measured by three levels of Adam. Adam de Bria, Adam de Yetzira, and Adam de Asiya. He doesn't mention the Asiya, but it's three levels. Adam de Bria, the Adam in Bria. No, it's not just there's a world called Bria. It's called the Adam, the level of Adam in Bria, which in general, Bria de Klolos, remember a macrocosm is Ak. Adam de Yetzira in Klolos is either Akudim, Nekudim, or sometimes a Keser, Atik and Arich. And Adam de Asiya in macrocosm is Atzilus Bria Yetzira Asiya. But you see also in Atzilus Bria Yetzira. In other words, we talk about three levels of Adam. Bria, Yetzira, Nasi. Adam the Bria, Adam the Yetzira, Adam the... There's a mimer called Drush Gimel Mine Adam from the Alter Rebbe. I mentioned a number of times in Ayin Beis, we learned it a number of times. We discuss it at length. The Tzemach Tzedek has it printed in Eira Teira Bolok and also Eira Teira in Yonim. Okay. So what do you see now? Before we was talking about Adam in the spheres. Zoh, Chochma, Malchus. Now he's broadened it, and it's also in the worlds, in the larger domains in Ishtalshlus. Whole of Ishtalshlus is defined by Adam. These three levels of Adam, starting from Adam Kadmon. Okay. So again, Adam is central in all of Ishtalshlus. And he continues on. Who is
the Me'orei Oil? What's his name?
Meir Papiras. Meir Papiras was a very big Mekubal. Again, like the Ramaz from the Gurei Arizal, it's called. Talmidim of the Arizal. Not direct, but Talmidim Mekabel from the Reb Chaim Vital and the others. He created an encyclopedia which is basically an Aleph-based order from Aleph through Taf, where he takes every level from Ava, Oir, and in this case, Ois Aleph, Adam, and he brings very briefly what level it is in Seder Ishtalshlus. And then there's a Yair Nesiv, there's a commentary on the side that elaborates and brings the Zoyars and sources. So Me'er Eir is very, very often quoted in Chassidus. You'll see it all the time. And it's always by Erchim. Me'er Eir, Ois Aleph, because it's structured by Aleph Beis. Ois Aleph, Sif Lamed Beis is Adam. So there's Rameir Mapepira, Kosav, the Zela Shene. And Chassidus cites Me'er Eir because it's a very Yesodistic fundamental structuring of all levels. So you want a level, like if somebody says Sheleg, snow, look it up in Me'er Eir, he'll give you the exact Kabbalistic level it is. There's no hasbara. There's no explanation. He just tells you Sheleg, Atik, or he'll give you Zah. He'll give the several different places, essentially the locations and the definitions of, and Kabbalistic definitions of these, of all words. Literally, almost every word. So what does he say in Ois Aleph Sif Lamed Beis? He writes, V'zela Shene, Rebbe Rashab is quoting him word for word. Adam Kadmon Nikra Hanetzel Harishon. Adam Kadmon is called the first emanation. Shehitzila Ein Sof, the first emanation that the Ein Sof emanated. In other words, before Ak, there was no structure at all. First emanation that Ein Sof emanated is Ak. Ube'erkei Nikra Adam de Bria. I'm not sure what he means by Ube'erkei. Ube'erkei means relative to it. It's called Adam de Bria.
Relative to the Eibishter, to Ein Sof HaMatzil.
Yeah, but pastors, right. Ube'erkei, relative to the Ein Sof HaMatzil, which is beyond Adam, this is called Adam de Bria. But it continues. Adam Arishan, Nikra Abba Ilah. Adam Arishan, the first human, is called Abba Ilah, the supernal Chochma, the supernal Abba is Chochma. Parts of Arishim Shenikr Ba'atzilus. The first structure, the first face or structure, that's Nikr, that's discernible, becomes obvious in Atzilus. Adam Stam, Chulu, V'hu Zah. Aha. So he's giving now all the levels of Adam. Adam de Bria is Ak, the first Netzal, the first emanation. Adam Arishan is Abilah in Atzilus, the first structure in Atzilus that emerges in Atzilus. Adam Stam, not Abilah and not Adam Kadmon. Remember, Adam Kadmon means the primordial one, the earliest one. Abilah, when you say Abba Stam, Adam Stam, That's Zah. V'gam ha-Malchus, he writes, Nikra Adam de b'merkava. It's called the Adam within the Merkava, the image that Yecheskel saw, the Merkava, the chariot. So basically, he describes 4 levels of Adam. Adam Kadmon, the first Netzal, the first emanation. Adam Ilah, Abi Ilah, is the parts of the first structure in Atzilus. Adam Stam is Zah. And also Malchus is called as the Adam Sheba Merkava. That's the lowest level. So essentially, everything we learned before, so we learned these 4 levels. He's now spelled them out.
It's 11 o'clock. Sorry to interrupt.
If you guys want to take a 5-minute break, how long is this thing for?
Just say a prayer. It's master this one.
Just say a
We want
prayer.
Mashiach now.
Basically, yeah. You want me to say it out loud in English?
Sure.
Okay.
Are you online? Are you watching it?
Yeah, so it just just say everybody says this together.
Oh, it's not an event online.
No, I don't.
No, it's just everybody begs for Mashiach.
Okay, Master of the universe.
Please go for it.
Okay. Master of the universe, we, your beloved children, united together around the world at this moment, are crying out to you in prayer. Please accept this prayer with grace and kindness. We sincerely thank you for all your daily blessings, but we implore you from the depth of our hearts to send Mashiach immediately to redeem us with mercy from this long exile and suffering and to bring peace to the world. We can't wait anymore. We desire your great name to be revealed, your dominion in the entire world, and your presence return to the Beis Hamikdash, the holy temple now. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, the Lord, our God, the Lord is one.
Amen.
Amen.
Can you hear us, son?
Halavai, our prayers pierce the heavens. What can I say? Anything else we have to do?
Not that I know.
No Aveda, nothing else. Okay,
Well, prayer is a Veda.
that's true. Okay, I'm glad you brought it up. I'm just looking. Is there anything? That's it. Okay.
Done by Rabbi Mesinda from South Africa.
Tzedakah.
What?
Tzedakah.
Good
Tzedakah.
idea.
And we're learning Torah, so we have all the 3 kavim, right? Yeah, everyone gets tzedakah, so we have tefillah, tzedakah. Resume learning, guys?
Shkoyach.
I'm saying, should we resume?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Good, perfect timing. Okay, so I'm at the bottom of page 1184. And by the way, we have now recorded for posterity, in the middle of this Ayin Beis Chassidus class, the tefillah for Mashiach. Great. So what do we have from all this? Let's sum up. He's established that Adam is a central word that defines what he called before, Adam. It's an interesting term. And now he said, so in other words, Adam is, as I elaborated at the introduction I gave, Adam is a central name used in the structure of the cosmic order. Nimtze, after the Ma'ir. So He brought Malchus, Chochma, Zah, Chochma, Malchus, Adam Kadmon, the Ramaz. Then he brought Adam Kadmon, and then he brought all the three Bri, Yetzir, Asiya, and then the Ma'er that ties it all together and literally spells out Adam on all levels. Nimtza. So what do we derive from this? The Bechlolus Ishtalshus Yesh B'chinas Adam. That in the general cosmic order, there's this level called Adam. Ubechol Mokim. And now he's going to explain what its role is. And in every level, wherever you refer to Adam, whether it's Adam Kadmon, Ak, or Adam Atzilus, Chochma, or Zah, or Malchus, in every level, B'chol Mokim, Ike B'chinas Adam, Hu B'chinas HaPnimius. So now he's explaining what is this level called Adam. It's the Pnimius of that dimension. So when you say Adam de Bria, the Pnimius of Bria, Adam de Yitzir, the Pnimius of Yitzir, Adam de Asiya, the Pnimius of Yitzir, of Asiya, Adam de Zah, Adam de Chochma, Adam de Malchus, the Pnimius. Because he's leading up to what Rabbi Yehuda said. The words was, Bara Adam al Kula. So he's addressing this issue, what that means. He says that the Adam in each level is the Pnimius of that level. It's a very fundamental piece here. Okay. The Adam, now he's going to explain why. The Adam be Gematria Ma. Adam is Gematria 45. Aleph, Daled, Mem. So Mem, Hey. Aleph is 1, 4, Daled, and Mem. So it's 45. Gematria Ma. We know the name Ma. Before I continue, let me just explain. We talked about it the other day. Ma, Ban, Sag, Ab. The four different combinations of the Shem Havaya based on the Milui. Whether you spell out the Hey with an Aleph, with a Hey, or with a Yud. So it's called Hey B'mil. There's Yud Ke Vav Ke B'milei Alfin is Ma, because when you add Yud, Hey, Vav Hey, and the Hey, and the Vav and the Hey are all with an Aleph, adds up to 45. Then the different combinations lead to the Hey B'milei Hey and leads to Ban. B'milei Yud leads to Ab, and Sag is a combination of a few. Point being is that these four levels of Yud Ke Vav Ke, they manifest in four very different type of Hamshachas. Adam is Ma. So besides the fact that Ma means bittul, that's why Adam is Ma, because the bittul of the human being is created fundamentally with bittul, the neshama, manifesting bittul, whereas Ban, for example, is more yesh, the behemoth, the yesh. It's also a permutation of Havaya. So he's now going to explain Shema. Now you may recall that Shema was elaborated pages upon pages, at least 30, 40 pages maybe, back in volume 1, when he spoke about the two interpretations, if you remember, Pella, Aleph. So Pella is Keser, Aleph is Chochma. So he spoke a lot about Ma, Koyach Ma, of Chochma, B'milei Alfin, Aleph, that the Aleph manifests the Pella, the wonder, two different interpretations, and there began a long discussion, the difference between Toyu and Tikkun, that Toyu, what radiates in Toyu is Shem Ban, which originates from Shem Sag, and Tikkun radiates Shem Ma, which originates from Shem Ab, 72. Long discussion there about how bittul of Tikkun is much more, is obviously creates the sustainable structure that in Toyu was chaotic and it was unstable because the Eris and Kalim did not have the right bittul they needed. A long discussion there about bittul. That essentially in Atzilus you have the bittul that creates iskalolus, interconnectivity, where everything recognizes the other and values it, and actually they all join together in a synergy to work in a symbiotic unity. That was what was discussed there at length. So now he's going to apply it here. So Adam is Gematria Ma. V'hu b'chinas, this is going to be a little Kabbalistic, but I'll explain. V'hu b'chinas shema milagav. So there's an expression, shema milagav, and it means the shema that's on the inside. In Aramaic, lagav and labar means on the outside. That's why Braisa comes from the word bar yaisa, because it was from the Tanoim, but they studied it not in the Beis Medrash b'fnim, lagav, but Braisa outside of the Beis Medrash. So that which was said by the Tanoim, not in the regular academy, was called a Braisa, bar.
Yeah.
And Mishnah, which was studied lagav. In Kabbalah, this is a common expression. We have melagav or labar. So he says shema melagav, which means the name of ma within, on the inside. We're going to learn, like sometimes you have the expression. I'm trying to remember what's lagav labar, famous one in Chassidus.
Ein toichoi kevoroi. His inner is not.
Yeah, that the outside is not like the inside. That there was a machlekes in Gemara, whether you need the Talmidim have to be people who their inside is like their outside, or there could be a certain dissonance. You say someone's teiche kibare, it means what you see on the outside is what he is on the inside, and vice versa. Teiche she'ena kibare, ain't teiche kibare would mean that the outside he looks one way and the inside is not quite that way. Right. One second. Yeah, what does it say? Havayim Elagav. Okay. Al Kapam Shem Havayim Elagav is an expression from Zoyar that the Shema is on the inside, meaning it reflects Pnimius. That's what he's saying here. Adam is Pnimius. So to put it in very simple, let me put it in Balabatish, simple English, so it shouldn't be confusing. When God created existence, on day 1, Vayhi Ayin, day 2, Yehida Kia, Teitzeres Desh on day 3, Me'eris on day 4, and so on. That we call that Chitzenius Haratzen. Why? Because the Kavanah was not to have light, or to have a heaven, or to have the vegetation. The Kavanah was to make a Dira B'Tachtenim. Like the Rashi says right in the beginning of Chumash, what does he say? Bereshis, B'shvil HaTeira, B'shvil HaYisrael. In other words, if someone asks you, what's the Kavanah Pnimius in the creation? Teira and Yisrael, the Adam. If you talk about the Chitzenius, that's the creation itself. You build a house, or you build a house for yourself or for your child. The physical house, you need rooms, you need bricks, you need wood, you need all the different things that make a house. But if someone says, is that the Pnimius of the house? They say, no, that's the Chitzenius of the house. It's necessary, but what is the inner purpose of it? Is to bring the Adam, the human being that will live there and will serve and will help that person serve God. The Kavanah Pnimius. So we say Shema Melagav is basically saying that Shema, which Adam is Gematria Shema, reflects the inner Kavanah, the Pnimius of every entity. So that's what he says a line before. The Hainu B'chinas HaPnimius. Shema Melagav, the Hainu B'chinas HaPnimius. Just explaining in simple English, that's the Kavanah Pnimius, that's the inner dimension of the purpose of it. So the Adam brings out the purpose, the inner dimension of existence, of creation. And now he's going to explain what that means on the different levels. Malchus. Let's take, for example, Malchus, not example, but it's spoke about Adam and Malchus. Let's talk about how this plays itself out of Malchus. Mashanikra Adam, when you say Malchus is called Adam, we learned before, Malchus is the Merkava Adam, the Ramah says it, the Mishpatim, the Me'er says it. What does it mean? So he says, when you say what Malchus is called Adam, Zeh B'chinas Partzuf HaPnimi de Malchus. Sheshorshe Mechochma V'Keser. So when we speak Adam of Malchus, you're not speaking about Malchus function. You're not talking about Malchus identity. and its direct immediate function. You're talking about what is the purpose of Malchus? What is the inner dimension of Malchus? And that is how it's rooted in Chochma and Keser. In other words, why was Malchus put there in the first place? To become the Malchus that will become Keser of Biyah and serve a role. So the Adam of Malchus is expressing the Pnimius of Malchus. Okay. Now, I must say, this is dense, because the Rebbe Rashab is not explaining. He's just stating levels here. I'm adding explanations just to make it more palatable. But the truth is, he's just saying levels. The parentheses is continuing, just stating the levels. The reason for this most likely is two things. He could be writing B'kitzur. This may have been added later. Or he's relying, and that's probably most likely, he's relying on what was said earlier in Ayin Beis. These ideas were discussed. Not quite in this context, but Shema Legav was discussed back in volume 1, and some of the other items here. So he's relying that we either learned it or we'll discuss it and elaborate. So don't be intimidated by the language. It is very brief and sounds very cryptic. You know, what is Malchus is very Kabbalistic, actually. But with this explanation, you'll get it. So bottom line, keep in mind that the Adam is the purpose and the inner purpose of everything. Take away the Adam, you only have the structure of Ishtalshlus. And the Adam, as we're going to learn in the words of Rabbi Yehuda, is what gives the whole Ishtalshlus purpose and elevates existence to the Kavanah that Eibishter wanted, which only a Neshama can do, because the Neshama has that DNA and the divine instructions that comes from the highest levels, all the way higher than the whole Ishtalshlus, as we'll learn. So it's the Adam that's going to create the unity. So when we say v'yadaita Ayin v'shavesa levavecha, not ata reisa ladas. Ata reisa ladas we learned earlier. That's the Eibishter revealing himself to us. That's the Eibishter giving us strength. It's mamayla lamata. V'yadaita Ayin is a mitzvah that you shall know today. You v'yadaita, you shall apply yourself and come to a state of das v'hakara, recognition. That what? And bring and v'shavesa levavecha, you shall draw it into your heart. That what? Ki Hashem hu Elokim. So this is a work momata lamayla. This is what the Adam does. The Adam unites all of existence, the highest and the lowest, b'shamayim mimal v'al ha'aretz mitochas, which of course is the main theme he wants to explain here. Unifying heaven and earth, the highest spiritual levels to the lowest material levels. But in doing so, he's using this language, which, as I said, is a little cryptic. But that's the bottom line that keep in mind. It's the Adam that achieves the Pnimius, that brings the Pnimius out. So when God created the world, by the time the sixth day before Adam came on earth, you had everything there, but who brought out the Pnimius of the world? What is its inner significance? As I mentioned before, that's why Adam named all the creatures, because he knew the Pnimius of the creature. He knew its Malchus, because he understood its purpose, not just that God created an animal or a sun or a moon or plants and so on, but the inner Pnimius of each creation and each creature. Okay. Oh boy. Okay. The next parentheses is not that simple either. It's a little more, needs a lot of explanation. So let's go for it. But let me stop and pause a moment. Anybody wants to ask anything about this? If not, we'll just continue. And I would suggest we just continue because we got to get through this little thicket of a lot of cryptic and Kabbalistic terms.
Yeah, Rabbi Jacobson, didn't the term from Adam change to Abi law? Did you say that? I don't have it in front of me, but he went from Adam, Adam Arishon, Adam Abria, Adam Malchus, but didn't he use for the Chochma? Was it Abba Elyon? He changed from
Abba
right.
Ilah,
So
Abba
why did he
Chochma
change?
Ilah.
Right. So why didn't he stay with the consistent term of Adam?
This is the language of the Ma'ora Eir, and that's what he writes.
But does that reflect something that that level doesn't have a level of Adam that we're talking about?
No, he says Adam Arishon Nikra Abba Ilah. That's what he says.
Hmm.
Adam Kadmon is the highest level. Adam Debriya. Adam Harishan, he says. He does use the word Adam Harishan.
Adam Harishan. And then he just
There's Adam
defined it.
Kadmon, Adam Harishan.
Adam
There's
Malchus.
expression Adam Stam, and then Adam de Merkava. So he does use Adam in all four.
Right, thank you. I didn't see the hair.
Okay. Kadmon, Rishon, Stam, and Malchus, Adam de Merkava. Okay. So now,
Is he referring to Adam Rishon? What is Adam Rishon? How is this coming in?
it's a level. Remember, Adam Harishan in Gashmis originates from Adam Harishan in Ruchnis.
So it's Zod Atzilus.
No, Chochma, Abilah. Parts of Harishan. It's called Rishon because it's the first parts of Shenikir Ba'atzilus, in the words of the Me'erer. Look inside. Adam Stam is Zah. Okay. So let's do the parenthesis. Yeshleman, and we can say Shazel Mashe'etzem Ha'esius Sharshan Bekadmus HaSeichel. Okay. In the Geras HaKedesh Siman Hey, like he says right away, Kameshkot B'Geras HaKedesh Siman Hey. There's a shaila in Chassidus and Kabbalah. The letters, Oisius, where do they originate from? We're not talking about the physical expression of the letters. We're not talking about the Hey Maitzahas HaPeh that we learned about, the 5 gutturals, the 5 instruments of expression, which is the tongue, the teeth, the palate, the throat, and the lips, which create the actual different expressions of the different Hebrew letters, all letters. He's talking about Ruchnius and Nefesh. Where do Oisius originate from? So you could argue that Oisius originate from the mouth. They're just like external instruments. They don't have any real shadish and deeper levels. But in Ageres HaKedesh, she says no. He says the root of Oisius, and we know that Oisius come from Malchus, Dibur, is rooted Mekadmus HaSeichel, from the deeper recesses of the superconscious Seichel. Doesn't say superconscious, so let's just say from the deeper recesses of intelligence. But deeper recess means from the earlier stages. In other words, it's not just that the mind and Chochma and Bina or Chochma conceives of ideas, but even letters are also originate there. The only thing is letters cannot be discerned and distinguished there. The letters are completely submerged within the idea. The letters later, as the idea becomes more diminished or more concealed, the letters begin to emerge. First Esis HaMachshava, then Esis HaDibur. You know, when I speak now, you actually hear letters. In thought, you can also discern letters. You could think in terms of, you can think with letters, but there's levels where the letters are not yet recognizable. But nevertheless, and that's what the Alter Rebbe is Machadish, based on different sources, the letters also originate in the highest levels. It's similar like saying that the Koyach HaGvul of Ein Sof, the Kalim are rooted in the Koyach HaGvul all the way in the highest levels. They just don't become Kalim until later. So to use the analogy with the artist, which here actually the analogy doesn't work. For an artist, he doesn't begin to use the instruments and collect his instruments till later stages. But in Lamaila, the Eibishter already envisioned the instruments, the kalim, or we'll call the Oisius, that he would use. So even though B'poel Mamish Asara Mamoris Nivra Elam, the letters the Eibishter actually uses is Malchus, but we know that Asara Mamoris are rooted in a much higher level, except they're not Oisius yet. So that's what he says. Oisius are rooted, Etzema Oisius, the core and essence of the letters are rooted in Kadmus HaSeichel, Kameshikosa Begeres HaKedesh Siman Hey, in the 5th section of Ageres HaKedesh in Tanya. V'hainu Tzuras HaEsius. That's the Tzuras HaEsius. I have to look it up what he means by that, because Sudus Asius means that even though the physical shape will not happen till later stage, but it's rooted in the highest levels. The Hamshach of an Aleph, for example, the actual Aleph will only happen when you have the bright light of the, let's say, the projector shining through the film of an Aleph Beis Gimel. But in the root, where is the concept of an Aleph rooted? All the way in the highest levels, what he calls Chochma. So though Malchus is where the letters emerge, but the letters are rooted in higher, that's the pnimius of Malchus. He says the Asius, the Chassidus Asius, that are rooted in Kadmus HaSeichel. V'hu inyan Abba Yosod Brato. That the father is the source that establishes the daughter. In other words, a daughter is rooted in the father. And the daughter refers to Malchus, Dibur. The Yadua, the Dibur, whom b'chinas medaber, b'chinas medaber, or b'chinas midbar, b'chinas medaber, probably. That Dibur comes from the speaker, from the one that the root of Dibur, which is b'chinas ha-keser, the level of keser. Why he's adding this parentheses, I'm not really sure what it adds here. I mean, he's basically saying that Malchus, which is Dibur, is rooted in Abba and Chochma and in Keser. So basically, that's the Pnimius, that's the Odom Sheba Malchus. But what does the parentheses actually add in Havana? I'm not positive. Maybe it will become apparent as we learn further. V'chein bezah, I'm going to go one more line and I'm going to stop because I have some things I must do. V'chein bezah, just like in Malchus we said Odom is the Pnimius, the same thing with Zah, Zah Rampen, who b'chinas Pnimius Zah, hamashpia eres ba'kelim. The Odom in Zah, top of page 1185. The Odom in Zah is the Pnimius of Zah, which is mashpia ha'eres ba'kelim. Transmits the eres into the kelim. So in Zah itself, the Odom brings the eres into the kelim. I think I figured out why he brings the parentheses. Because without the Odom level, a human being is necessary. We're created with a neshama, which has in it oisius, kadmus seichel, with seichel, but it's the Odom, the actual human being, that draws from the deepest parts of the mind into actual letters and words, into Malchus. Maybe that's why he's saying it, just to give us some type of visualization that the human is the one that speaks. If you don't speak, if it remains all in its potential state, you don't have this manifestation. The same thing is Zah. The Odom, the Pnimius of Zah, draws mashpia. Pnimius Zah, mashpia ha'eres ba'kelim. That essentially brings the eres into the kelim. So again, the Odom is what actualizes and consummates and concretizes each function here. Malchus's function, now Zah's function. Shezeh Ayin milagav iyu shema. And that's the meaning milagav, on the inside, on the inner, is that shema, the iyu eirech ha'atzilus. And that is the path of Atzilus. We said that before. Shema the iu eirech ha'atzilus. The iu shakid di'alana, and that's what irrigates and nourishes the tree.
C'est Pasach Leo.
Yeah. We actually learned it earlier. So now he's going to explain, I think he's going to explain why is this different than Malchus Eirech D'Atzilus. So Shakid D'Ilana irrigates the tree. That's Shema, Adam. So the Adam irrigates, which means it's bringing mashpia, eris into kelim, making it grow. So Zah on its own is midas, and it's the Adam that makes these midas grow and blossom. Yeah. I'm going to stop here because even though it's all part of this discussion, but let's stop here. Top of page 1185. Does anybody want to ask anything?
Which is the Shema? Which aspect of Havaya is Shema? Why does he keep coming back to that particular Shem?
Shema is Gematria Adam. It's the aspect that creates the human being that is the...
Which one of the permutations of Havaya is Shema?
I explained the first one with the Aleph. 45. Yud is 20. Hey Aleph is 6. The other Hey Aleph is 6. 12 and 20 is what? 32. And the Vav, what's a Yud K Vav, so 6 is like 12 and 20 is 32. Yeah, that's 13. Vav Aleph Vav.
Okay, thank you.
So is it saying that in order to draw down from Zah, from Pnimius Zah into Kalim, you need a level of Medaber, like Malchus?
No, Medaber is in Malchus, and Zah has a different role, the Adam.
No, I'm saying in order to draw down Zah, you need the Adam, which is a Medaber.
He's not, again, not Medaber. He's not talking about Medaber now. He's talking about Zah as the Adam nourishes emotions when a human being feels and experiences emotions. Medaber is the word you use in Malchus, not in Zah.
So I'm saying that what Malchus is what draws down from
We're not
Zah.
talking about Malchus. We're talking about now Adam de Zah. Adam de Malchus he addressed at the bottom of last page. Now we're talking about Adam of Zah.
And here in the parentheses, it uses the term Medaber.
That's in Malchus. We moved on from Malchus. We're not talking about Zah.
Okay.
Look at the last line. U'kamoy came b'Zah.
V'chein b'Zah?
Yeah. That he said there's Adam in Malchus, there's Adam in Zah, there's Adam in Chochma, there's Adam in Adam Kadmon. We talked about Malchus.
Is he explaining?
Now he's talking about Zah, not Malchus.
Is he explaining in the parentheses that Adam is the bechina of Medaber?
Yes, Malchus, as far as Malchus goes.
And so I'm saying, so that's what draws down into the Kalim is the bechina of Adam.
No, that's not. It's two separate things. That's okay. Malchus and this is Zah. This is emotions and that's speech. Malchus. Mm-hmm.
Rabbi, because the Rabbi Rashab is bringing ultimately that Adam is the one who accomplishes this shiluv and this unification of bringing the Or into this world, bringing Elokus into this world, and using these faculties. I have a question a little bit like the chicken and the egg. Maybe this is way beyond scope right now, but if you think about the Esser Spheros themselves, to what extent are the Esser Spheros created because we are, in other words, which came first? Because Adam we are created the way we are. We have, we have our mental attributes, our emotional attributes, and because the Eibishter wants us to be the vehicle, to be the activist, to bring Elokus into this world. To what extent are the Esser Spheros essentially reflecting the way God made man, the way we are, our constitution, mental and spiritual and emotional, so that we could accomplish this hamshacha of Elokus into this world? In other words, versus the other way would be, well, no, these Esser Spheros, they pre-exist man, and we reflect those. Or did Eibishter say, well, I'm going to create man this way. He's going to have these faculties, these attributes. and I'm gonna order my metaphysical holiness, my metaphysical energy in alignment with the way I've created man, so that man can use his neshama to bring a locus into this world. If you understand my question.
I believe I alluded to the answer earlier when I brought the Mishnah in Sanhedrin. The human being, as you know, Rashi brings it, and the Alter Rebbe has a whole mimer in Torah Eir, was made up of all the elements of the world. We have mineral, we have things that grow, we have the animal within us, we have the human. The earth that God used to create the Adam was taken from everywhere, the earth from the entire world, because the role of man is to elevate all of existence. But at the same time, to elevate it, man has to be made of all of existence. So both are correct. We are made of the same components that Ishtalshalus is made of. Chochma, Bina, there's 10 spheres. In the physical world, our human body has in it all elements. It's like the human being is the small universe. Because to elevate the universe, we have to be of it. But what is added in the human being that no other part of the creation has is the image of God, free will, the ability to transform the world and not just be part of the world. So it's not a contradiction. We're made up of all the components. The DNA of the human being is made up of the same components as Seder Shtalshlus, the 10 faculties. But we are the inner purpose of those faculties. We're here to elevate them and fulfill the purpose for which they were made, which is, like I said before, with a house. God created the art. The art is made up of 10 spheres. The human being is part of that art. But we have one more element in it, the most key element, is what is the purpose of this art? What do we spend? It wasn't just made to make beautiful art. It was in order to make a dira b'tachtenim. And for that, you need the human. We build a mishkan. We take gold, silver, copper. We take the objects of this world. We take our faculties and everything that we are made up of, also including our animal soul. And we're made up of this world. And then we have the power to elevate it. So a human being is made of all the same ingredients that the world is made of, but the additional, like Rabbi Yehuda adds, with the words that the Adam is bara al Adam al kula. The human has an additional element that is greater than and more powerful. That's why you see, even on a physical level, human beings have learned to master this earth. We've conquered space. We're able to capture and tame animals that are far greater and stronger than we are. Our ingenuity and our minds and our souls have a power that's stronger than anything in existence, because we have the ability, the divine strength given to us through our divine image to elevate. So both are correct.
I guess what I'm asking is, in the Abishter's mind, if you will, you'll forgive the illusion, did he envision man and the way he wanted to make man before before the Tzimtzum, before he created spheres?
Yeah, of course. The Ayin Beis, you weren't here when we were learning this, but there's entire pages upon pages about the expression Olu b'machshav Yisrael, machshavtem shel Yisrael, Olu b'machshava, that machshavtem Yisrael Kadmon l'kol davar, that because the Pnimius, I just said before, an example, when you build a house for your child, the house is the building, is the whole ishtalshlus. But before the house begins, you're envisioning, why am I building a house? Because I have a child that I want to have a home for. So there's the Pnimius HaKavana of the house that precedes the house. There's the building of the house. And then there's the end process when you put that child or that soul into the house, the soul in a body. So absolutely, the Pnimius always precedes the Chitzenius. So the Pnimius, which is the Adam, originates in Machshava, Seif Ma'asav Machshava Tchila, originates in Machshava. Well, there it's about creation. Originates in the highest levels where the intention begins. Yes, correct.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Okay.
It's not clear enough. It's not clear enough to me, but he's talking about the Etzem or ACS. What is this? How is this connected? And what is this adding here?
I explained it now because time is out. Either go back to the recording or I'll try to explain in next class, or look in the Ageres HaKedesh. I believe I explained it here, what it comes to add. Okay.
Thank you.
We're getting
Let's stop